Hello.
Hi, hello. Welcome to August Disaster Deconstructed live stream. I've forgotten for a second what month we are in. We're on. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's very early where Jason is. It's really late where some of our participants are today. It's perfect for me, midday in the UK. So hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today to mark International Youth Day. Hooray! Today we're teamed up with the UN Major Group for Children and Youth and Children and Youth International in partnership with the Converge Working Group to bring to you a group of absolutely amazing and inspiring individuals who worked on the project Asia Pacific researchers, practitioners, and policymakers in dialogue with children and youth. And some of you may have heard the special episodes that we released in May, where we engaged with youth fellows who shared the experiences of COVID in these special episodes. And if you haven't heard them yet, do find them on the podcast. And so today we are actually joined by the youth fellows. We're joined by Rainlin Krop, Soniko Podal, and Raywin Toroniara, as well as some of the organizers of the project and supporters of the project. Moa Hergot, Jacqueline Lippi Saikia, and Dr. Bernie Towers. So you will hear from all of them in just a few minutes. A fantastic panel of speakers today. As always, please post questions wherever you're watching this live stream, on Twitter, on Facebook, or on YouTube. We will be following up with questions, and we do hope you have lots of questions for our participants, because this is just such a fantastic opportunity to learn from them. All right, let's go, Jason.
Yeah, it's really such a pleasure to have the chance to do this, and especially on International Youth Day. The theme for International Youth Day this year is transforming food systems, youth innovation for human and planetary health. And I think with the results of the IPCC report the other day, and the kind of looking forward to how we can empower the next generation to take charge and really shift us towards a different trajectory is really at the top of everybody's agenda right now, right? So yeah, this has really been a great project to be a part of. We're so delighted to have participated, as Ksenia mentioned. If anybody hasn't listened to the episodes that we released, please do. There's one episode where we were looking more at the what happened during COVID through the eyes of children and youth in Asia. And then there's looking more at the impacts of COVID on their lives. And then the second episode was more looking forward, talking about what adults need to hear and actually take action on. So I think a really, really great double episode. And today we wanted to bring together this group of people, especially some of the youth that were involved in the research project, to actually talk about the process, because this collaborative project that actually brought together youth research participants to do the work, I think was a different model for research. And it very much aligns with what we are about on the podcast and trying to promote through our different collaborations and professional work. So we're really excited about this. We're focusing today on the process of doing research, which centers youth voices and their agency. And so for the first sort of 10 minutes here, I want to hand over to some of the senior members of the project team that were responsible for delivering this project. And as you mentioned, we have with us Brini, Moa, and Jacqueline. And so I want to, first of all, just introduce them to you and then hand over to them to set the context for our conversation with the youth fellows. Okay, so Moa Hergard is a board member of the UN MGCY. She has 8 years of experience within intergovernmental policy development. implementation, follow-up, and review. Moa studies a Master of Science in Epidemiology. Oh, wow. Epidemiology at London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. It wouldn't be our live stream if we didn't mess up.
No, epidemiology is the word of the year as well. Go on.
I know. At Karolinska Institute. Moa is a research associate at the Center of Research on Healthcare and Disasters at Karolinska Institute. So welcome, Moa. Jacqueline Nipi-Seikia is a disaster management professional engaged in DRR policymaking and programs. She has experience working in various disasters at the ground level, as well as in policy and advocacy. She holds a master's degree in disaster management from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and is a researcher with a focus on DRR policies, mainstreaming of DRR in developmental programs, recovery planning, and eco-based DRR. Finally, Dr. Brioni Towers is a research fellow in the Centre for Urban Research, RMIT University, Australia. Her research is focused on disaster risk reduction education for children and youth. She's lead investigator on the Australian Bushfire and Natural Hazards Cooperative Research Centre's project, Building BBB is in my mind. Building Best Practice on Child-Centered Disaster Risk Reduction, and co-lead of the Natural Hazards Centre Converge COVID-19 Working Group on Children, Youth, and Schools. Wow, I got there in the end. Reading's hard in the morning. It's early.
More coffee for Jason.
Yeah. All right, so let me bring all of you on screen, Moa, Jacqueline, and Brioni, and just say we're delighted to have you here with us. And I'd just like to hand over to you all for the next 10 minutes to set the context for our discussion with the young fellows.
Thanks a lot, Jason and Xenia, for the opening and introduction there. And well done, despite the early morning. I'll
just drink some more coffee.
That sounds good. So, as many of us maybe know, the children and youth have always been very much engaged in disaster risk reduction in different means, not the least on the local level. But around 2014, we started to do a larger mobilization of young people engaged as well in the intergovernmental processes on DRR within the UN system. Preparation as well then for the World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction, which have been amazing mobilizations. So when building on that, then the engagement of young people in the Asia region has been very much on the forefront. I imagine that it's very much as well because the countries they are recognized is due to the many hazards they've been facing during the many years back. So with this in mind, we thought about thinking as well about a bit different methodologies, as mentioned by Jason now as well, that other ways to engage young people and also very much reach groups that we normally maybe do not engage as much in different groups of children and youth throughout the region. So that's why this project got developed, which was funded by the Swedish Development Aid Agency through the Stockholm Environmental Institute, where I'm actually myself is from as well, from Sweden. Funny coincidence, nothing to do with it. and the partners of the project was, as mentioned, the major group of children and youth, as well as GADRES and APCSS. And the aim is solely to engage children and youth through different means and methodologies and create a dialogue between them and other actors, both governmental representatives, as well as researchers and scientists and different groups of the society to engage them in collecting their opinions and views and thoughts and to work together for a more resilient world and so. And there's, of course, a part of capacity building within all this as well, and mobilization, which have been very successful, but you'll hear more about it. And the countries engaged is a long list, which was very good. It was a good spread of it. So it was Nepal, India, Pakistan, as well as Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Bhutan, Australia, Solomon Island, Philippines, and Hong Kong and Bangladesh. So large part of the region, which was very nice to see. And so on. Why this is important is I would put it down very much on 3 points. One of them is, of course, we should engage all parts of the society. And then children and youth is one aspect. And as Brione very much know as well, that maybe one need to use different methodologies depending on which age group you're working with as well. And another part is, of course, to prepare, engage the next generation, as Jason mentioned now before, as they will be the one taking over in the future. Another aspect is also, of course, that they can maybe sit on knowledge and experience and thoughts that others do not have because of a different mindset. So that's why this is truly important. But enough from me, because it's actually Jacqueline and Brione. Sorry, I'm very bad with names there. And who've done a bunch of the work. So I will first hand over to Jacqueline, who was the lead researcher in the project. And there was several different activities which was part of this project. So I wonder if you could explain a little bit more about this. And so over to you, Jacqueline. Thank you.
Thank you, Moa. Thank you so much. I think as the great strength, both Brandy and you are with me today. So I say, yay, we did it. So yeah, so we have spent so many weeks, and I think Moa had an extensive experience working with me. So every problem I used to keep going, Moa, what should I do? And even Brandy would remember, like, we used to sit for long Sundays and weekends and completing all the work. So it was a great experience. So, like the activities we had divided into two. So one is the time capsule project. So we had the entire range of 3 activities, like the broadcast, we had pandemic diaries, and we had a series of Vox Pop videos. So which is actually being done by the young fellows. We will hear them in few minutes now. So it's an amazing work where they got all the perspective and the experiences faced by the youth from their country on COVID-19. So in the second part, we had the fellowship program. So that's very much into, like, to understand, okay, fine, if we want children and youth to be engaged in the policy processes, how we can do it, how we can push for more good policy advocacy and bring the voices from the countries that we worked with. So that's about the activities and the 2 parts of activities that we did through this entire month's period.
Thank you, Jacqueline. So thanks a lot, and it will be interesting to hear from the fellows then as well shortly on their experience and the amazing work they did. As we all know, we've already heard it, epidemiology, pandemic, it's a bit different world we live in now, and the COVID actually struck shortly after we were given this funding. And I very much know that you all struggled quite a lot in different ways with COVID, also with the implementation of this project. But personally as well, I feel like you've done it even better than we first planned when you adapted it to the pandemic. But I would like to ask you, Jacqueline, then, like, how did you adapt the project to make sure that everybody were engaged in a meaningful way, despite the very special circumstances we all been in during the last 1.5 years now?
Yep. So it was a difficult time for us as well. Like, we had gone through a many round of revision to the project because we tried to adapt to the COVID situation, and plus we also faced individual country problems because at that time Myanmar was having the political troubles, and again in the northern part of Philippines we had few political troubles. So each country has we have to think, okay, what approach should we take to adapt to it. But I think with all guidance from the donor, from all the team, so we did it well. So like how we did it, so we had fellows representing the countries that you mentioned, the name of the countries, and they're like so enthusiastic youth that we got in the team. So they were very much engaged in their community, maybe voluntarily, or they're associated with NGOs in the groundwork. So that's how it helped us to get the voices from the youth. Basically, the main target was to get it from the ground, the voices from the ground, and also we made sure like we follow all the country-specific COVID protocols, and we try to adjust to the all the political problems that were going on in the countries. So, but yes, we could do it well, and also the fellows are the main strength, I would say. So they were divided into three teams, which was led by the young researchers. Young researchers were divided based on their expertise and the area they belong to. So South Asia had one, East Asia had one, and then from the Pacific we had one. And then comes me, as a lead researcher, and then we are very privileged to have the three technical leads who supported us in the time capsule projects. So that's how we went well, and then yeah, we did followed all the COVID protocols of the countries.
That's quite a lot of protocols to keep track on, which I guess can be very challenging. Maybe you guys should now work with like review and this protocol was good, this was bad, with all the lessons learned from the COVID period. But yeah, thanks a lot, and it's amazing, and I guess that it also shows quite well that people challenge us to put things online now in COVID, but the younger generation, I imagine, had probably a bit less challenges on that. Because we are used to it much more already before. So well done. So Brownie, you have been leading this time capsule project, which I was like, first I read about. It's like, are we going to travel in time? Or like, what is it? It sounds really cool, but what is it?
Well, I think the idea generally was so that children and youth of the future, or policymakers of the future, can travel back in time to understand the experiences of the children and youth who are going through this pandemic right now. But I guess, that's the time capsule part of it. But what we have actually learned through the time capsule project is just how important it is to listen to youth voices now about the problems that they're facing and what can be done to better support them during this crisis. And so the time capsule involved 3 different platforms through which children and youth could across the Asia Pacific, in the countries that you've already mentioned, could share their experiences of the pandemic from their own perspectives. So we've got the Vox Pop series, which is led by video producer David Waddell, where the children and youth have shared their perspectives and experiences via video recordings on their digital devices and then sent those to David, and David has edited those into short films. We've got the podcast series hosted by Disasters Deconstructed, where the children and young people submitted audio recordings to Jason and Ksenia, who then produced the 2 podcast episodes that explore the impacts of COVID-19 on children and youth, but also have a lot of really interesting commentary from Jason and Ksenia too, around the importance of amplifying youth voices during the pandemic and in disaster risk reduction more generally. And then we've also got the Pandemic Diaries, which was led by Dr. Ali Dunhill. And the children and youth wrote personal essays that told their own pandemic story. And so the first collection of diaries contained 17 essays from children and youth across the Asia Pacific. And those essays provide really deep personal insights into the social, educational, economic and health impacts of the pandemic on them and their families and their communities. And so the children and youth who contributed to the pandemic time capsule were supported by the young fellows at the local level, who did a really amazing job of coordinating the collection of all of this audio, video and text material. And then they were in turn supported by our wonderful technical leads, Jason, Ksenia, David and Ali, who supported them to do the work on the ground. So yeah, it was a really fun project, and we're really proud of the contributions that the children and young people have made.
That sounds really innovative. I guess that it's not just the young people who can be innovative. But no offense there, though. We are maybe a older younger, who came up with innovative methodology there. Sounds really cool. Just the last question to you, quickly though, because we'll hear more from the young people as well. What's the outcome? What can we learn from them?
I think in their entirety, the time capsule contributions from the children and young people really demonstrate the degree to which they understand the social, cultural, economic, political dimensions of disasters, and that means that they do have a really important contribution to make to policy and practice for managing these crises. And we just need to keep making sure that they have that platform to share their experiences and their perspectives.
Well said, and good wrap up for this introduction here now. So over to you directly, Simia. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for the great introduction. And it was so much fun working with you all. We've really enjoyed this project, and hopefully it will continue. Now we will actually hear from the youth fellows, which is again great, and we're so excited to bring the youth fellows to you today. So our first youth fellow is Sonika Podol, who is currently working as the program director at Youth for Environment, Education and Development Foundation. Hi, Sonika. Sonika is also a UNESCAP YW4CA climate advocate and works as an admin team member in SAARC youth platform. Sonika has been working closely with local communities for climate and disaster-related awareness in Nepal. And so now we would like to hear from you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your involvement in this project.
Thank you so much, Kashinia. It was a really great introduction. And as Jacqueline and Bryony and Moa already told that there were two parts about the project, and I was one of the young fellows from Nepal. And regarding the youth fellowship project, I had the task to collect the data. And for collecting the data, I used three methods, which were survey, community survey, and focus group discussions and key informant interviews. So for survey, I chose a district in Nepal called Lomjung, which is very much affected by disasters. It is one of the most vulnerable districts of Nepal. And I conducted FREG and KII, FREG in the same district and KII at the local level, at the regional level, and also with the youth working for different NGOs and INGOs related to climate crisis and disaster. And similarly, regarding the time capsule project, there were three activities: the Box Pop video, Disaster Deconstructed Podcast, and Pandemic Diaries. And I really enjoyed working in especially in the time capsule project, because the youth were so open to my questions. They answered the questions and they shared the things that they normally do not share. So Pandemic Diaries, we approached two children to write the Pandemic Diaries themselves. And for the Box Pop videos, we each young fellow did five interviews of the youth, and similar with the Disaster Deconstructed podcast. So in overall, it was a really great learning experience, and I would say that it is the experience of lifetime for me. The mentors that we got were so great, and they guided us so well. Jacqueline was the lead researcher, and similarly there were three young researchers in the project. So they guided us so well, and everything went on so well. So it was a really great experience.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this experience with us. It's great to hear about it. Jason, over to you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Sonika. We look forward to talking more with you in the remainder of our live stream. And before then,
Thank
we
you
want
so
to
much.
introduce two more young fellows. So the second young fellow that is joining us today is Raywin Taroniara. Raywin is an environment and climate change graduate from the University of South Pacific with a working experience in youth work. She is currently working as Program Assistant Pacific Region at the Commonwealth Youth Program. As a Solomon Islander, she has been an advocate for climate change and youth development and believes that the empowerment of young people enables resilient societies. Raywin, welcome to the live stream. We'd also like to hear a bit about you and how you took part in the project.
Hello. Thank you very much, Jason, for the kind introduction. And hello to everyone who are tuning into this webinar. As Jason has mentioned, I am from the Solomon Islands. And I too believe that resilient young people will build resilient communities to have a resilient future. So when talking about climate change, disaster, youth and children should be the center of attention if you want to build a climate resilient future. So I have been involving in this DRR project as a young fellow from the Solomon Islands Pacific region. And having been involved in this project not only builds my knowledge and leadership skills, but it opens my eyes to the realities, hopes, aspirations, and experiences of young people across Asia Pacific region in terms of how they deal and cope with disaster, climate change, and also the COVID-19 pandemic through the activities that my colleague earlier has mentioned, including interviews, podcasts, and pandemic diary. I think being part of the project, I'm really grateful that this project has provided a platform for us young people to bring together our collective views and experience and stories with the aim to inform policy and decision making. So I leave it as that. I might come in later with other discussions. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Raywin.
Super. Thank you. Thank you so much, Raywin. And we will come back to some of the points that you've made in a few minutes' time. And for the audience, if you have questions, please post them on social media. Jason and I are trying to multitask and look after the questions on Twitter, Facebook, but also here. And it's great. You can see some of the greetings and questions appearing on the screen. So we want to hear from you, and we will ask the questions to our youth fellows later on in a few minutes' time. And finally, we want to introduce yet another youth fellow who contributed and worked on this project, and it's Randolin Kuyop. Hi, Randolin. Welcome to the live stream. Randolin is an indigenous youth from the Igorot Tuwali tribe in the Cordillera, North Philippines. Randolip has a bachelor degree in communication arts and is now working with the Cordillera People's Alliance and with grassroots organizations, helping and amplifying their voices through the various campaigns of the Alliance and also through the organization's programs and projects. Welcome. It's great to hear from you. And perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about your involvement on the project.
Yes, great to be here as well, and thank you for that introduction. Yeah, well, I think the lead researchers and my fellow young fellows have talked so much about what we did with the project, and much of what they said about because we were invited here to talk about what we went through. So I think I'm gonna be contributing more on what I gained from the experience as part of this project. So as Indigenous peoples, we kind of have a different perspective about what disaster is and what causes these disasters, because of course we have the normal environmental phenomena that causes disasters, but there are also man-made disasters or human actions that aggravates the effects of natural disasters. And so that's something that I wanted to these different perspectives from the youth, from the indigenous youth, most especially, something that I wanted to bring into this project, or something I wanted to integrate, because this was a great opportunity for us to get our voices out there. Because as indigenous peoples, the environment, the climate, the protection of the biodiversity is central to our campaigns, to our struggles, especially with our struggle to defend ancestral land from foreign or from corporate plunder. The preserving the biodiversity, and so this is something that I wanted us to bring into the project. And after informing our members, our youth from the community, they were really excited to finally have their voices and their perspective be out there and to share with other people. Unfortunately, so I get to that eventually. Unfortunately, we were going through a really bad crisis, both because of the pandemic and the unstable political climate here in the Philippines. So there were of course, there were health protocols that we couldn't breach. We must not breach in order to protect everyone from the virus, and as well as some other measures that we have to take to ensure our safety because of the conflicts, various conflicts going on here in the country. And so what I gained from this is how we could adjust to the situation, so we wouldn't just be cornered when unfortunate circumstances, when we were caught in an unfortunate circumstance. So despite those, we were able to partner with some institutions who were willing to introduce some youth who were able to put forward their voices, their opinion about this about the particular topic, about the research. And that's how I was able to collect minimal amount of information. It may not be at the scale that I imagined it to be or wanted it to be, but at least we're able to get some voices out of the indigenous youth here in the Cordillera. And I think if there will be more question about this later, I may be able to talk more about it. That is from me.
Super. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing this, Randolyn. And I think, the point that you made about the corporate nature and kind of the capitalist nature that really affects ecosystem it is really powerful, and it's really important that we talk about this. So yeah, thanks a lot. And we will come back to this, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Good.
Sorry. So we are just going to bring all of the young fellows back into this conversation. We want to open it up and ask you some questions. As Ksenia mentioned, we invite anyone tuning into the stream to drop any further questions or comments into your chat box wherever you're tuning in, whether Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. And we'll try to get to those if we have any questions from the audience. But I want to start off by asking you all for brief thoughts on this question. Do you feel personally that youth is underrepresented in conversations about our future? Who wants to go? I can go first to Sonika.
Okay, thank you so much, Jason. Yes, youth and children, they are the most vulnerable groups of populations regarding the climate change and disasters. But if they are trained and educated and resourced properly, then they can be the leaders and involved in disaster risk reduction and management, and also the adaptation. So they should be directly involved in policy making at local, national, and also the international levels. And they should be made capable of educating their communities and take the leadership in post-disaster recovery as well. And I think they are vulnerable, but they should be viewed more from the potentiality perspective rather than from the vulnerability perspective. And also within the youth, also there are some classes of people like indigenous youth, the young adolescent girls, the differently able people, and the ethnic minorities. They also should be heard and included, because they are the ones who are more underrepresented. So yeah, that's all from my side.
Thanks, Sonika. It's so interesting to think about vulnerability. And we had an episode last season on the podcast about this. If anybody would like to listen more, but obviously we talk about vulnerability a lot, and it's often really unhelpful the way that we use vulnerability to pathologize groups and not recognize that all of us have different vulnerabilities, and they're not one-dimensional at all, right? And people who we often label like this have strengths, have capacities, have all sorts of amazing abilities to transform their own futures, right? So yeah, thanks for that, Sonika. Okay, let's go to Raywin. Do you have thoughts on this question?
Yeah, so I believe that there has been effort made to include young people in various avenues for conversations about the future. But I think the word representation in itself needs to be debunked. I was reflecting the other day on the Roger Hart ladder of participation, and I think I personally feel that we are at most still at the tokenistic state. That's my personal view, and there is more that needs to be done in the various level of national, regional, and international space to transform the notion of just representing into meaningful representation and participation of young people and children. I think there are 2 points that I would like to highlight here. I think the first one is to ensure that young people are equipped with tools, knowledge, and data that will enable them to participate. And in that sense, capacity building is important. Yes, we can invite them to participate and for them to be at the table, to be a representative. But are they being able to meaningfully participate and convey the needs and issues of young people, considering the inclusion of marginalized and including young people with disability, for instance. And this also brings up the question of what do we mean by underrepresented? Because being at the table itself does not mean that young people are fully represented. There is more that needs to be done, I think, to address the support young people and children of their representation. And I think the final bit that I would like to add is how does our recommendations are considered and assimilated into decision making. There are many youth organizations that are curating recommendations and feedback and experience from young people, and I believe the project that we've done is one of them. But I think there's a question that I've been reflecting on is how willing are policymakers and how much of what we recommend will be taken forward. As I believe that this speaks to how young people's representation and young people being recognized and acknowledged as equal stakeholders in every conversations about the future. I leave it as that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan. And there's a lot of I think that's just really meaningful, and we often talk about participation and how that can simply be used as a checkbox exercise or used as a way to push through agendas by bringing somebody to appear on paper, but not necessarily have any agency or power, right? But to make a project kind of look better or pass through some checks and balances. So thank you for bringing up these issues. Over to you, Rentalen. Do you have thoughts on this first question?
Yeah, I do think so that the youth have minimal representation in these important functions. And I think it's such a waste of their potentials, their energy, and their time, because the youth have more of the time to study things, to have fresh perspective about things, and times are changing, culture is always evolving, and so the younger generations are always the ones who are bringing in new culture, introducing new ideas into society, and so I think they should also be given special representation in all the mechanisms, especially in policy making. Actually, in the Philippines, it was only in 2009 that we got a we get an officially elected youth representative in the Philippine Congress, and that I think that is such a big gain for us youth. And so at this time, with my organization, with the capacity of our organization, we try to train youth to be the next actors or active actors, contributors into the different functions or engagements, like the second liners. We train them to be educators, to be speakers, to be the next. So we push them to do their own lobbies, to be the one to represent their own sector and put their own voices in legislative councils at different levels of the government. And I think that is a very good training ground in molding effective leaders and efficient leaders for the future.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I guess it's great to see that there is some progress right in the right direction, but we're nowhere near where we need to be if we are to truly engage with youth and children. And that leads nicely to my next. You've kind of alluded to this, so what can this old wise man very often learn, from young people? So why is listening to children and youth is so important if we really are to imagine the future? Raywin, I'm going to start from you just to mix the order a little bit.
Yeah. So I think so. First, I would like to reiterate the fact that currently we are at the face of COVID-19. And government actions need to focus on combating the spread of COVID-19. But it is still important that discussions around existing issues should not be left behind, including issues that are affecting young people and children. So I'd like to bring up a statistics here. So in the Solomon Islands, 70% of the total population, as reported in 2015, were below the age of 34 years old. And in our context, our youth age is up to 35, and similar to which is similar also to other Pacific Island countries, which almost to half of the percentage of the population are young people and children. Yet, it has been an ongoing call that young people and children needs to be included in important stakeholders. To be included as important stakeholders in decision makings and discussions about the future. And in this case, it is evident that decision making and policy development needs to be informed by the larger part of the population, and of course, is young people and children. So they should not be left behind in that. And the other thing is, today young people are paving their own way around to be at the forefront of discussions. They are innovating, participating, and have been contributing to their country development, it being recognized or not. So I think taking the targeted action to support them, for them to continue the excellent work is really important, and it will contribute a huge to achieving sustainable development as well, which can lead to more resilient and sustainable future that we all envisage. So I think, therefore, multi-sectoral approach that are inclusive of young people and children to decision making on climate change, disaster risk reduction, and post-COVID-19, I think it's really important.
Thank you so much, Raywin. It strikes me that this kind of the imagining the future really needs voices, right? Because while youth and children now, I think after Monday, we've all realized that the crisis is we are in the middle of the crisis now, and it will be the next generation or the current generation of young people that will have to deal with this. Yet I am hearing that the voices are not quite as represented, but it's great to see that there is resistance. And I hope, we will talk a little bit more about power and the kind of resistance from the ground as we continue with this conversation today. But I'm so glad you brought that up, that we don't need the top-down solutions. We can voice our hopes from the ground and push them forward. So thank you for that. Sonika, over to you. So why do you think we should be listening to youth and children?
Um, yes, the youth and children, they always have the special needs during the disasters and climate crisis, and also the youth, they are the energetic group of population. They are always willing to contribute to bring positive change in the community and their country. They are also more familiar with the current technologies, and they would always suggest the solutions and the adaptation measures that are best suited at present and for the future. So I think the positive energy of youth must be channelized by listening to them, and their vulnerabilities should also be addressed. Their special needs should be addressed, and their suggestions and inputs should be taken. And the policymakers should also consider these youth voices while formulating the policies and while amending the policies as well. So I think that's all from my side.
Great, thank you so much, Sonika. we kind of we need to, right, to really make sure that we are hearing the voices, and so I'm going to ask the same Rendlin the same question, but also we now have a question from the audience which is very much related, right, to kind of to the importance of why we need to listen to the voices. So Rendlin, the question remains, why should we listen? But also I want to expand it a bit further, and this is a question from Nike Suawa. And it's a question on meaningful youth capacity building and empowerment. So what are the steps and consideration required to for the various groups to meaningfully participate? And in relation to why and how, I suppose. So could you tell us, what do you think? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, just a short take on for the first question. Much of the amazing things that we consider that we have to this day, like the technological advancements, inventions, started as a dream of the youth or a dream of the children, and now we have them right in front of us. So if you want to get an insight into what the future is going to look like, maybe also we should listen to the dreams of the youth and what they envision for themselves in the future, because they'll be the ones who'll be left behind to continue and to continue what we have where we left off, and develop what they can, or do what they can for the advancement of everything in the society. To build resilient communities, maybe it is also important that we look back to the lessons of history, like how our actions, the different factors that affected the development of things like the disasters and its impacts on our lives. Like we use our past ancestors maybe, or the people before didn't used to have like super typhoons, or they didn't have they didn't experience this much disastrous effect from the changing climate or environment. Yes, but then for now it has learning through the course of history, there are some things that action from man that has changed that the effect of that has made it so much worse for us. And so it's important we also look forward to that and impart that knowledge into the youth for them to be able to develop a better insight on how they are going to mitigate these effects in the future. And maybe through their innovative thinking, develop a way or a system on how they can get through these disasters. That's it.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Rendlin.
Yeah, thanks, Rendlin. We have a short amount of time left. We have nine minutes until the hour, and so we have another final question to wrap up. If we can get some brief responses, we wanted to ask you about your involvement in this project, and if you can share with us maybe some key things that you felt you've learned, or ways in which you've grown from your involvement in the project. That would be great. Maybe we'll come to Raywin first of all.
Yep. So Thank you. So I have learned and appreciate the opportunity to be part of this project. That's the first thing I would like to say. And one of the big takeaway that I have learned from and find useful to my other line of work is the importance of recognizing the context of the different situations the young people are facing within their communities. And this leads to ensure that when creating policies at the national, regional level, it needs to be informed by the current context and realities. And this group has provided a lot of knowledge on that. So COVID-19 has undoubtedly affected everybody, but has policies that are put in place consider digital device that we are having on the different islands in the Pacific? The current educational curriculum match the current needs and styles of work? This including having teachers being trained on digital skills and how to effectively use the digital platform to deliver the lessons. So these are some of the examples and questions that I've kind of pondered upon while being part of this project. So when aligning priorities, it is important to have as much bottom-up approach as for top-down approach. And so when we look at international framework, there's the current context, and youth situations are being considered enough? Are the contributions made by young people and children being considered as a measurement for success? So I think these are the learnings that I've gained and the questions that I've asked to help me build on from what I've learned from the project and of which I find useful with my current work in the social policy development space as well. So that is what I would like to share.
Thanks so much, Rowan. Okay, Rendlin, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's more on some skills that I've developed because of the various challenges that I went through with the project. So, of course, there was a challenge with the communication, coordination, because since we cannot go work on the ground with the youth and with our organizations from the grassroots communities. And so we all have this information, we all have this technical knowledge that we wanted to pass on through to them, but how do we course through this information to them to ensure that it reaches their level? And so by partnering or by learning how to partner with or lobby on a local level for these to be integrated in the local policies, and for these plans to actually, or for pushing the government to also actually take an action or an active participation in ensuring that all parts of the community are involved in these efforts is, I think, a very good thing that I got from this experience. And I've also gained insights on what are the other things that the youth can start or initiate from their own perspective and from their own capacity in dealing with disasters, and especially with education and information dissemination.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rendlin. Sonika.
Yes, I learned so many things from this project. The first one would be that this project helped me better understand the formulation of plans, the policies, and the strategies by the local, provincial, and national government of my country. I realized that there were so many things that I didn't know earlier, but this project, through this project, I learned many things. And the second is it enabled me to directly interact with the children and youth, talk to them, and identify their needs and the gaps that we need to fulfill. And the third thing is this project taught me teamwork, and I developed some communication skills. And the fourth and the last would be, I learned that different people who experience the same thing in different ways, like the level of vulnerabilities faced by are different, and they should be addressed accordingly. So that's all from my side.
Thank you so much, Sonika. I think the most important here is that we've learned from all of you so much as well. So thank you so much for all your hard work, for the contributions. It's been fun, and I were putting the episodes together and just listening to all the interviews. It was really inspiring and eye-opening. So thank you, and of course thank you to Bryony, Moa, Jacqueline, and everybody else involved in this project. You know, there are lots of people behind who really made it happen. Thank you everyone for your time. We really hope you enjoyed this live stream today. Look, it's even daylight now where Jason is, which is great. So the time really passed so fast. So thank you. We're really grateful for your time. We really hope everybody enjoyed this conversation as much as we did, and we wish we had more time, but we only have an hour. Our next live stream will be on the 15th of September at 10 p.m. UK time, where we will be joined again by our friend JC Gaia, and we will be talking about post-disaster research with early career researchers from all around the world. That's the weird timing, so I'll have to stay up for once. And also, we hope that you're enjoying season 5 of Disasters Deconstructed. There's still quite a few really exciting episodes to come, so if you haven't listened yet, do catch up. Thank you again, everyone, and we hope to see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.